Titled People and Projects. Just want to take a moment to review a couple of key ideas from the introductory presentation. I know many of you have already viewed that presentation and gone over these key ideas, but I think it's always good as we start bridging into another aspect of the class to just briefly review whatever we've talked about before. And if you recall, design historically used to be associated with almost a physical environment. It was associated with increasing productivity and things like that. But recently, design has started to take on this sense of focusing on the socio-emotional factors of the social environment. And this is really what the leader is trying to do, is really kind of create that organizational culture and investment within the individual employees or organizational personnel. As you also may recall, engagement is about that individual's emotional commitment or investment within the activity of the organization, the mission, the vision, the goals, the work that's going to be done. All this is really important to us because we're really talking about leadership, and when you're trying to operationalize leadership, it becomes really important for us to understand and articulate the fact that leadership is going to be connected with productivity. We know that leadership is going to involve creating those social environments and trying to engage employees at a very, very high level. However, productivity, metrics, goals, these things are going to be associated with organizational work, and we'd be remiss if we didn't necessarily talk about that or really highlight the connection between those things. Creating safe environments or empowering cultures are processes that are trying to achieve particular ends. And those ends can be involved investing in the employees so that they grow, individually, personally, professionally, that type of thing. But it's also going to be about trying to complete, engage in the organizational work, regardless of what that work is. Organizations have missions, they have vision statements, they're going to have core values that help them identify and achieve their goals. Right? So these smaller goals really have to be set so that on a day-to-day basis, we can make sure that we're accomplishing the duties, the responsibilities, the tasks that we need to accomplish for that organization and ultimately the individuals to be successful. If you think back to some of the leadership literature, they'll talk a lot about task orientation. And what that really means is just quite literally, our people, our organizations completing the tasks that they need to complete. And think about your work, or think about what it is that you want to do, long-term for a career. What are those daily tasks that have to be accomplished? And that's really what we're talking about here. So organizational productivity, then, it's really going to be the result of not just engaging people, but also executing projects. Hence the reason that this particular module is called People and Projects. We want to talk a little bit about leading to and leading through a project. Project management is going to be key to organizational productivity and health. Many of you have probably already come across the phrase project management in the past, but for those of you that have not, we just kind of want to break it down a little bit and some of the key terms. And oftentimes we get so used to the word project that we forget to sort of operationalize it in our mind. What does it really mean? Well, according to some folks in the Project Management Institute, a project is going to be a temporary, unique, and non-routine operation involving defined beginning and end times, defined scope and resources, and oftentimes really is going to involve collaborators from a number of different organizations or different teams, departments, etc. within an organization. Right? So it's really about that teamwork, that cohesion, and that collaboration. And all that's happening in regards to one particular thing. That's what the project is. So therefore, project management is going to be the application of the knowledge, skills, tools, and techniques to all these different things so that you can meet the requirements of the project, whatever that is. Meeting some of these requirements, it takes a robust skill set. Okay? And if you think about balancing or managing the fiscal money resources, the social resources of what's available to you all as a group. But then also think about the human resources or the human element. All these things have to be balanced at one time and then overlaid over this idea of productivity. If you're able to do that and engage in this very robust skill set of project management, then that's going to be something that you can really sort of tout or highlight as being a key feature of yourself as being an impactful leader. Number of stages to the project management process. When you think about these stages, and I think it's always good for a PowerPoint slide to list 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Just realize that anytime you're dealing with people, things are not necessarily unilateral, right? So we talk about initiating, planning, executing, monitoring, and then closing, and that seems like a very, very simple story arc to a project management process. Just remember, anytime you're dealing with work environments or volunteers, or you're dealing with people in general, people that are going to engage in ideas and how to execute and develop programs, those types of things, that process is not always going to be unilateral and easy. You're going to have bumps along the way. So just kind of keep that in the back of your mind as we briefly go over these 5 stages. Stage 1, you're going to initiate. This is just like it sounds. The project is going to begin, and this is where those broad goals are going to be defined. Normally, depending on where you are in the organizational structure, the project is going to be given or assigned to you, especially early in your career. That's not a bad thing. That's just kind of a reality. And for those people that say, well, this is not necessarily a project that I want to complete, it may be part of your job. It may be part of the responsibilities that are given to you as someone who's a leader within your organization. Excuse me. Planning. This is exactly what it sounds like as well. You set out a plan. You put forth a pathway, and you do this so that everyone really understands what they have to do in order to execute the project. This is going to be your basic journalistic questions of what, where, when, how, why, those types of things. I've also highlighted right here, this is a hyperlink for those people that would like to brush up on SMART goals. This is where maybe you start developing as a leader for the project management team. You start developing some SMART goals. And we're not going to go too heavy into this, but a SMART goal is specific, measurable. It's going to be achievable. It has to be realistic. And then there's usually kind of a sense of time orientation to it. And the whole idea here is that if you go through the process of setting goals that are done in this sort of SMART process or an appropriate way, then when you achieve these goals, they're meaningful, right? So that's why you go through that process. So feel free to, read that hyperlinked article. If you have any questions about the SMART goal process, then feel free to talk to me. I'll see what I can do to help. Next stage is executing. This is where your team and your resources are going to be defined or redefined, right? You're going to have your team. You're going to really understand what things are going to be available to you all to complete your work. Those timelines and those metrics are going to be established, whether they're by you and your team or whether they're by individuals that are above you all in the organizational structure. You're also really going to start thinking about expectations and schedules. We know that humans in general like to have expectations in all situations. And if there are no expectations, then that cognitive dissonance starts to develop, and sometimes people can develop anxiety. So one of the things that you're going to be doing as a project management leader is to be providing the update, providing the schedule. This is what we're going to do. This is when we're going to work. This is how we're going to execute these types of things. And the expectations really help to contextualize the work that is really begin in earnest in this particular stage, right? People need to understand what being productive every single day means, and that's where those expectations come in. So if you're developing a fundraising event, for example, and you start kind of going through this process, by the time you get to executing, you're starting to then put this fundraising event together. What does that mean? Maybe you're going to be working with sponsors. Let's say it's a 5K or something like that, a fun run or something like that, and you're partnering with a not-for-profit, and you're going to be using this to raise funds for a variety of different things. Okay, that's wonderful. Well, now you're actually starting to outline where are we going to have this 5K. We're going to need to work with perhaps city administration. If it's going to be a local event, we need to make sure that we have the route. That route we may not have access if it's going to be on the street. So this is where you bring in the municipality. If you're going to be on a private business or a private higher education campus, then you need to connect with those individuals so they have access, those types of things, right? And you're going to chart sort of these milestones. Well, before we can actually, start selling the sponsors to the event, we need to make sure that we have the sponsorship package put together, right? So these are just sort of the basics of the schedules and those expectations. Next, we have monitoring or controlling. Depending on the source of information you consult for project management, sometimes this particular stage is called a couple different things, but really it's about evaluation and starting to look at and understand where are we meeting deadlines. It's one thing to meet a deadline, but if the quality of the work is being sacrificed because the deadline was too aggressive, then maybe this is where, as a leader, you pull back, you adjust that deadline so that quality can increase. You're also going to be sort of doing a appraisal of the situation, right? What's going on? This is going to involve tracking the costs. You're going to make sure that we are putting together the quote-unquote deliverables as necessary. And this really is just about meeting those expectations, those schedules. And as you're kind of doing that, when we talk about ensuring team productivity, that's not just about staying on schedule. That's also about checking in with that human element, seeing how the people that are involved in this team are working together, how the personalities meshing, what types of changes do we need to institute? Do we need to pull back on the work schedule for a week or two, et cetera, et cetera. Finally, we have closing. I think what's really interesting about a project is oftentimes you think, all right, we're done, and let's just close up shop and go on home. The thing here is usually most projects are far more complicated than that, especially, depending on what type of organization you're going to be involved with. You might be connecting with or engaging with subcontractors, right? So if that's the case, then you need to terminate those subcontracts, and sometimes that's going to involve different specific evaluation reports, those types of things. I think also what's really important here is as a leader, this is where you really try to quantify and evaluate the human element, the engagement of the team, the productivity of the team, and you start looking at how did we perform, how did the individuals perform, and let's be honest here, how did you as an individual, as a leader, as a productive member of this team, how did you perform? And then you kind of bring all those things together. I think it's probably of note here is that, again, closing of a project is not something that's just going to be done in a day or two. If it is, then it's probably done a little bit too quickly, right? You want to have that self-reflection and that evaluation and that sort of honest debriefing time, if we kind of want to use some of the recent nomenclature, debriefing, think back, what worked, what didn't work, what could we improve for next time, those types of things. In terms of being a well-rounded leader, we talk about project management knowledge, but if you think about it, these really are attributes or skill sets. And the thing I really like about a skill set in terms of trying to think about knowledge development is that skills can be developed. It's not like you're just born with this idea of, oh, I know how to manage time, right? These are all skills that can be learned. So whether you're talking about how do I collaborate and trying to increase the efficiency of collaboration, thinking about, oh, well, what if people on my team don't actually live in the same town? And many of us are well versed now in the remote working environment and things like that. But that's going to the remote working environment presents a whole host of different challenges. So when you're thinking about collaboration, again, it's a skill set. It's not just saying, oh, we need to sit around a boardroom table and make sure that everyone introduces themselves and then we can be off and running. Again, understanding the scope and impact of what it is you're trying to do, the 30,000-foot overview. If and when you accomplish this project, what's that going to do? If we're going to go back to this fundraising idea, well, maybe this particular this fundraiser that you're engaging in, it's something that your company or your organization wants to do in terms of corporate social responsibility, partnership, or initiative. You want to engage with your community. And so maybe raising these funds allows your organization to make a charitable donation to a worthwhile cause that is really in alignment with the core values or the mission or the vision of your organization. And so that's really, understanding this scope is that this particular fundraising might not just be engaging in corporate social responsibility. It might not just be putting on a 5K or a fun run. It might be raising money for cancer research. And think about how cancer has touched the lives of so many people, maybe even yourself. So that's what we're talking about. These projects that we work on, there is this large end goal. Think of that scope, think of that impact, right? And as you kind of focus on what it is, what's the real reason that we're doing this, why are we doing that, then that allows you to balance the cost and the quality of the day-to-day work. It helps you to better understand why you're taking all of this time and energy to understand time management for your team and balancing the different personalities of all the people working on it. Think about logistics of organizational human resource management. So if we talk about the human element and balancing those personalities, we'll think about that sort of HR environment, which is, yes, balancing that, the sense of personalities, but also, we have rules, whether it's within an organization, within a state, within, the federal system. We have rules that you have to adhere by, and work needs to be executed in an appropriate way. Other things would be communication and risk management. How do we get the resources and the equipment that we need? And what are some other stakeholders? What are people outside, for example, our team or even our organization that we need to be engaging with, right? Because oftentimes collaboration isn't just going to be the people on your team. It's going to involve neighborhoods and communities and other organizations, municipalities, maybe even states. Think if you're going to be involved in the World Health Organization or UN or something like that. Now you're not even talking about just connecting between states. You're talking about engaging and connecting stakeholders in different countries. Maybe you're talking about different religious ideologies. So there's a lot there when we talk about connecting with stakeholders and really understanding integration and collaboration. That's why when we talk about leaders need to have robust skill sets as they kind of work through the project management process, it really is about being well-rounded and understanding how to engage people and organizations at a very high level. Understanding an organization's design and engagement processes really is important for charting a course, not just for yourself and your personal career, but also every individual within that organization. And admittedly, this class is primarily focused on creating those foundational organizational structures for increasing engagement, whether you're your mission, your vision, those types of things. But if you understand how to execute project on a little bit more of a micro level within that larger organizational framework, then you're able to move both organization and individuals forward at the same time. And that really is an important thing for a leader to understand how to balance, how to invest in the individual, but also how to simultaneously invest in that larger organizational environment. So in order to grow or further refine your project management skill set, please make sure that you go through the module assignment that's listed on Blackboard. Go through that process, complete that assignment by the appropriate due date. And as always, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me and I'll do whatever it is that I can to help and assist.